Welcome back, everyone, to On.net. I'm super excited because we are talking Linux today. That's right, not just about how to build apps on Linux, but actually how to build apps for Linux on Linux with .net and with Uno. And I couldn't think of a better person than Jérôme, the CTO of the Uno Platform. Jérôme, how's it going, buddy?
Doing great. Thank you very much.
I'm so excited. You have all had some amazing releases of Uno and just actually have just been like nonstop. It's been really great to see all the advancements in the entire multi-platform space around
Correct.
.NET. And I think sometimes we don't talk about those other platforms that aren't like in our pockets every single day. You know what I mean? Embedded. We
Yes.
talk about web and like all the places we can go. We see Blazor all the time and we see Maui all the time. But, I talk to customers all the time. I'm sure you do, which is like, I'm building for all sorts of different platforms. I'm like, hey, I'm on a Linux box, or I have embedded Linux, or I need to take the same app and put it on the web. And Uno is sort of all of these things doing all of this stuff. So I guess I just sales pitched the Uno for you.
Pretty
But
much.
if people don't know, it's sort of a special flavor, right? If they're coming from the Maui world, or maybe they even have Onya world, or different like UWP worlds, like it's a flavor to it. So maybe you can
It
describe
is.
really quick the Uno in a nutshell.
For sure. So Uno is about doing C Sharp and XAML on .NET in general. So depending, it could be iOS, Android, Catalyst, the web can be on Linux, can be on Windows. And it's using so for the XAML part, it's using the flavor from WinUI. And there's also a C Sharp markup version of it. So you can do basically your UI using C Sharp instead of using XAML. So some people are very interested in this. And so basically, it's about developing the app once and running on all those platforms without touching anything.
Nice. Very cool. And I think a lot of people often ask, like, well, how does that actually work? And what's the overlap with maybe how Maui works, for example, or Xamarin before that? Do you want to give like an architectural overview of that?
Of course, I can. I have a diagram for that
All right, cool.
if
Let's
you
go
want to.
ahead. Yeah, let's head to your machine.
Great. So, of course, showing the architecture of Uno, basically, so making differences between other platforms. The interesting part here is that Uno is not just a renderer. So when you compare it to Maui or to other platforms like Avalonia or Qt or maybe Flutter, for instance, Uno is depending on the platform, is using different renderers. So, for instance, on iOS and Android, Uno is using pretty much like Maui, the underlying controls to render content, but without the Chrome. So that
Mm.
means that we're rendering the same visual. So if you take a Uno app on all platforms, it will look the same, but the renderers are going to be different. It's very important for us because on specific platforms like iOS, Android, and the web specifically, having access to the full power of accessibility, for instance, is very important. And that means that we're using the underlying platforms. And there are some applications like, for instance, NuGet.info. It's a NuGet package explorer that we've developed, and you probably used, by the way. And this one is using the DOM to render the content. So when you
Mm.
take a look at an application like this, it's rendering using the DOM. But on other targets, like for instance, when you're using Linux, for instance, we're going to be using Skia and Skia Sharp from our friend Matthew Leibowitz at Microsoft. And we're rendering the whole content by the pixel. So using everything Skia Sharp has to offer. And we're talking, so the Skia backend and the flavor, if you will, runs on Windows, it runs on Linux, and it also runs on Mac OS. So we're able to mix and match the kind of support we want based on the different platforms. Now, with regards to differences between other platforms, it's all about having the let's say the let's say the ability to let's say flexibility. It's the familiarity. I was searching for the words. I had it in French, but familiarity with a certain API set. So if you're more into WinUI, then you may be more accustomed, or WPF for that matter, because it's very similar. You may be more accustomed to go to Uno because it looks that way, or it may be because if you want to go to the web, then using the same XAML and want to go to the web, then you may want to choose Uno. That's the kind of differences that we get when developing there. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, the flexibility, right? And that's why I wanted to have you on, and kind of like, I love having, from the ecosystem, right? .NET is this one huge ecosystem that, the promise of being able to build everything, like, yeah, like we have lots of stuff in the box. There's lots of
Exactly.
stuff out there. I come from the Xamarin days, which is like we were outside the box, right? It's like this is what we
Yes.
did, and continue to do. But it's cool also to see how things build on top of each other, right? Like you're saying, is
Yes.
that there's core underlying platform technology coming in, which means if you have familiarity with those APIs of iOS and Android, if you're building there, you can leverage that stuff there. Since it's just
Correct.
.NET, you can leverage the entire .NET ecosystem, which of course is super important, and on Linux now, which is like fantastic.
Exactly. And one of the cool thing about working with Microsoft and the .NET team is that everything .NET in general is the same across platforms, and we're not inventing anything. And when there's a new release of .NET, everything comes for free in many respects. And for the web for WebAssembly, it's pretty much the same. For iOS and Android, we're sitting just above the .NET for iOS and Android. Maui sits on top of, so it's pretty much the same thing. So for new features and AOT things and newer security features that were added recently and things like that, comes along with all the .NET ecosystem. So that's we're basically standing on the shoulder of the giant.
Awesome. That's cool. So how would someone get started with Uno? And you're here on a Linux machine, I see, which is
Yes.
fantastic. So what's like the setup?
Yeah, so the setup. So just very quickly, that machine is so it's very interesting. This is an Ubuntu KDE desktop that's running inside a container in a Docker container, which runs in WSL, which runs into Windows.
Beautiful.
Okay, so it's kind of a mix of things that I wanted to do the tech demo in terms of making sure that we can get everything running there. And I'm RDPing. So using remote desktop, I'm RDPing into the Ubuntu from my Windows machine. So what you're seeing here is actually a stack of texts that are running there. So it's a full Linux. It's just completely there. It's running on the Linux kernel that's running on WSL. So that's pretty cool on that side. Now, the first thing that people want to do is go to the getting started. But one of the things that we do is have the ability to provide something that's called Uno check. And Uno check is actually a derivative of what was called Maui check a very long time ago. And we repurposed it a little bit so that we can get a set of tooling that are automatically validated. So make sure that you have OpenJDK installed, Android SDK, because you can do .NET for Android on Linux, which is super cool.
Yeah.
It's something that's not super advertised, but very nice to see that it's available. And I'm going to show very quickly that it's something that is definitely possible. Setting up .NET, setting up the project templates for Uno, and then installing the workloads for Android, if that's possible. So setting up everything like this.
Yeah. Awesome.
So next, one of the things that we provide is a way to create your project templates using a website. So we have an Uno Platform app that runs on the web that is called new.platform.uno. And you basically say, I want to create a project that's called my project. You click start, and then you can choose all sorts of options, like recommended templates, or choose .NET 9, things like that. You can choose your platforms, and, all the platforms that Uno supports. You can choose the presentation. There's MVUX, which is an extended version of MVU that's specific from Uno. Encourage you to give it a try if you're familiar with reactive UI and reactive extensions, things like that. You'll be just at home. I can choose XAML Markup. If you want to do just plain C#, and I'm going to show you that just right after. It's super cool. You can choose your themes, Fluent, Material, a lot of extensions to enhance the whole experience with your developing applications. Features like having toolkit, having a WASM multi-threading, making a PWA. This is a PWA, by the way. If you can install it and put it in your taskbar, so that's pretty nice. And a few other things they're providing, like UI testing and other pieces like CI pipelines. So once you're done, you can click the create button. It will give you a command line that you can go and paste directly into your command line, your shell. Then it will create a few things, and then you're done. You have your first application just created up with all the parameters that are set up properly, because you don't want to remember all of that. That's way too much.
Very cool. Go ahead and zoom in a little bit on the text there for me. So basically, yeah, perfect. So what you're saying is, hey, you can of course just do .NET New Uno app, blah blah blah, but there's all these sort of flexibility command line prompts, and that wizard basically guides you through all of it, which is very cool. I love it.
Nice. Exactly. All sorts of getting started faster to have a fuller app, if you will, more featureful app.
Nice. Very cool.
So once you're done, you can basically go to something that looks like this. So once so this is VS Code. On Linux, we support VS Code and Writer. Both are running pretty nicely. The latest version of Writer is having some difficulty with some of the new target frameworks that we've added in our latest version of dotnet of Uno Platform, but it's getting fixed. So stay tuned for that. And we have an extension that you need to install. So it's called Uno Platform.
Okay.
If you search for this, you're going to get just pretty much the same thing as you can do with Maui, pretty much. And it provides XAML IntelliSense. It provides hot reload for XAML and C#. And it provides debugging hot reload for the web as well. So for WebAssembly.
Nice. And you get all your C# dev kit stuff. It all kind of works together. Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, it sits on top of C# dev kit. That's pretty cool. So we're using all of this, and it's a pretty smooth experience. Very, very nice to work with. So with all the C# inclusion, you get the Solution Explorer, and then you get something that looks pretty close to what Maui has with a platforms folder. You can get all the platforms here. So I only have Android and WebAssembly for desktop, but you can get all the others as well. If you want to run on a larger set of platforms.
This is cool. Yeah, it looks very familiar. If you've done sort of anything, in the .NET sort of multi-platform universe before, I see main model, main page, there's like a little README here, and now the single project, beautiful. Love a good single project. This is fantastic. And then standard dependencies is oh, perfect. Yeah, I love this. I was about to ask the next question is kind of similar features as far as multi-targeting, right?
Multi-targeting, but the interesting thing, and that's the new thing that we added in Uno 5.2, it's WebAssembly, and we've merged and taken the approach of creating an SDK, which allows us to have a very a uniform experience across platforms, including the web, which currently Blazor is not able to do. You can't merge the two inside of a single project. So that's something that we've done very quickly, and it's amazing to use because you don't have to do anything; it just works.
Nice, very cool.
And then we have a few things like Uno features here, and it enables additional features without having to add a gigantic list of package references.
Cool.
Makes it easier to work with.
Nice.
So next we have all the features that are standard, and then we can go to a main page. So this is a standard C# markup. So basically, it looks like XAML, but in code. So you can define your data context, you can set your background, you can set your content, you have your stack panels, you can set your alignment that way. It looks pretty similar to XAML, but it's just refactorable, it's debuggable a bit more, things like that. One thing that I wanted to show more quickly without going into too much detail about what that kind of application does is that we're supporting adding extensions for controls that are provided by non-Uno projects. So for instance, we've added support for the live charts package, and we're generating automatically APIs that are coming from that specific library, and this is going to be showing a polar chart that I'm going to show you very quickly. But anyways, it's things like that. We're supporting bindings, supporting text block, margin, things like that. We're also supporting cross platform-specific code like this. So you can do things like if it's on WebAssembly, then do this and everything like that. And to just demo that quickly, let me just start the app. So we're going to be selecting just desktop. And we're going to go and debug the application. So I'm just going to select the desktop here, and then just going to Control F5. We're going to start the app. I'm just Control F5 for now because we're waiting eagerly on a feature that's coming from the C# Dev Kit to do non-browser, debugger-oriented hot reload. And so that's one of the limitations that we have right now. So stay tuned for that as well.
Cool. So this is a Linux native app window basically that just popped up, right?
Correct.
And then these controls look very fluenty to me, but this is being rendered by Skia#. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So what you see here, so it's a X11 native window. So there's nothing else. It's just we're creating our X11 window. We're just rendering a Skia canvas on top, and then we're rendering all of this using a Skia primitive, but using the WinUI source. So we're a lot of the WinUI source that's been public for a while, and so the styling looks the same, and that's why it's very familiar to Windows. But it can be changed if you want to do material, for instance, or your own custom theme. You can do that as well. So that will, if you choose material styling, that text box will look like any other Android material app.
Oh, cool.
So on top, you can see here that this is a polar chart that's coming from so animated. That's super cool. It's super nice to see, to be able to do that kind of things.
Yeah.
It's all hardware accelerated using OpenGL. So on Linux, if you're running on Mac OS, it's using Metal. On Windows, it's using OpenGL as well. So you can get a few things like this, and we can do hot reload as well. So let's say this is of interest, so we can see that, it's going to be, let's say, Skia 2. If I do an update here, take a few seconds, and then I get my button to change here, and it's going to be, oh, I need to change the keyboard, and there you go. So we have the update, the bindings have stayed, everything's stayed the same, and it works. You can just do the upgrades there. It's super nice to be able to do with hot reload, and all the work that's been done by the .NET team. I don't know if you were in this, James, but it's amazing the kind of productivity and enhancements that we get by using hot reload.
Yeah, it's super cool. One question for you here is, obviously this is kind of like out of the box, file new, you get all these great features. One question I have for you, I don't know if you are able to show it or just talk about it, is, I feel like when I'm primarily a mobile developer first, so like I'm used to like navigation stacks, or if I'm on desktop, I'm used to like multiple windows. Is that also supported scenarios, like if someone wanted to do that with Uno?
Yes, of course. So multi-window is actually something that we've added for desktop targets. Using in Uno 5.2. So you can create new windows. I don't have the demo here, but you can basically create a new window. You could just new window, then activate, and then you're going to get a second window that you can render into. And if you're doing navigation, so if you're on mobile, you can do basically frame navigation based. So with the back buttons at the top, and the gestures to go back, like you would find on iOS and things like that. So this is out of the box from Uno, and you can go a little bit forward like this. We have the Uno toolkit that provides additional features to be able to get into more specific mobile designs or desktop design, depending on what you want to get to there. Very cool. Yeah, so there's that, and of course you can do web if you want. That's one of the other cool things that you get here. So if you basically build your application there, so while it's built, you can also have Android. I have that same Android. So this is super cool. This is an Android emulator running in WSL, running on Windows, emulated, and it runs pretty quickly. It's super cool to see.
Wild. Yeah, it's wild.
It's super nice. So it will do the same when you run it on your physical machine, but that's pretty much what you can get. So if I click multiple times button, I'm going to get the same behavior. Same thing here. If I do this, I'm going to get the same kind of visual. So on the web, on Linux, on Mac, on iOS and others, you're going to get the same benefits there with Uno.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then basically, like at the end of the day, since it's running on like similar tech under the hood, like you were saying, under the scenes, right? For like Android, for example, that'll just be a Android app bundle. It goes through like this, like the compilation steps. I kind of want this is important, I guess, for obviously each platform is a little bit different, but the compilation steps for Android is the same compilation steps of just a .NET Android app, or a Maui Android app, or a Uno Android app, right? It's all the same. So like you said, if the team, as it progresses, Uno progresses for these core platforms as well, which is important to kind of state. It's one harmonious sort of family kind of happening.
That's correct. So making APKs, making things that go to the web, making MISICs if you want to go to the Windows Store, or making IPAs, or making PKGs, or things like that. Or we're looking into packaging a bit more with Flatpak and Snaps and others for Linux, and making sure that the packaging experience is the best to get everything included, and one-click publication. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at to make sure that the experience is really good for developers to publish their applications on all platforms.
Nice.
And of course, if you're on the web, deploying on Azure Static Apps is super nice. Making sure that your app is PWA for users to install directly on the desktop is super cool. Something else that I wanted to show you, and that's something that's very, very important, is UI is nice, but non-UI is also very cool. Yeah. So being able to use platform APIs, like being able to open files or things like that, is something that's pretty important. And we have the Uno Gallery, which is an application that we develop as part of Uno to showcase what Uno is able to do. And we're basically showing all sorts of platform APIs. So depending on the target, sometimes it's supported, sometimes it's not, depending on what you're running on. But for instance, if you want to do, let's say, geolocation or things like that, the web has those APIs. So if you develop basically against one API, and then it's available wherever it provides support. So gotcha. We're having things like so non-UI features. So you can see all the non-UI features and brushes and things like that. We have access to accelerometer when that's available. So on that machine, it's not available, of course, because it's not there because it's completely emulated. But you can get access to all those APIs like lamp, launcher, light sensor, local settings. If you want to store settings, this is the same API everywhere. You get a pedometer, you get vibration, things like that. So it's pretty cool. So there's plenty others that are not necessarily demoed here, but gives the ability to use the same API everywhere. But being able to select files, having gamepad, for instance, you're able to use your gamepad on the browser. You can connect your Xbox game controller and have it used by the browser, things like that. So that's super cool to be able to do across platforms.
And then I assume also, again, because it's just .NET running, right? So since .NET runs on Linux, right? If you're using System.io or you're using normal sort of APIs in the world of .NET, that's all just going to work the same.
It does. Yeah, standard .NET APIs. You can take any package that exists that is net standard 2 and up, pretty much, and get it included in your app. To some extent, some of the Net 8 Android and iOS packages are also supported if they're not relying necessarily on MAUI APIs, but just .NET, iOS, Android, Catalyst APIs. Then they're going to be compatible with Uno as well. If you're running on Linux, and then you're going to be able to use any kind of underlying API. So if you're making the DLL import or the new fancy library import, then you're going to be able to call into whatever API that's available on Linux. We're doing that for basically managing the windows. We don't have any kind of native compiled code for being all this. We're just using standard DLL import and library import to get communication with X11 to show you that window.
Very cool. One question for you here too, because I'm sure we'll get asked in the questions. If you do have questions here on YouTube, just go ahead and put them below. Is there's many flavors to Linux, right? Like,
yes.
Does it just work up on all of them? Is there like a guide for like where and how they run on Linux, or how does that work? I'm not my knowledge of Linux isn't as much as I would like to be. So this is part of me upgrading my Linux knowledge for sure.
No worries. Yeah. So obviously the Linux ecosystem is super large. So we test as much as we can. We have members of the team that are on various distributions and testing out the whole things that we're presenting. There are some of the distribution that may be a bit more exotic, where you have to install more things to get there. So we have documentation that's available on our website that allows to gets you to a starting point. So particularly with the setup. So when you go to VS Code, you're going to get some information to get your setup on Linux, and particularly what you need to install at the end. So we have the Ubuntu set. We have Arch Linux and Manjaro. So any kind of Debian and related distros are super well supported. And the others, if you find anything that doesn't work and you're missing packages, let us know. We're going to be updating our documentation. But as long as .NET runs, it's pretty sure that it will run for the rest.
Nice. Awesome. Very cool. Is there anything else you want to show off at all, or like, or like, where can people contribute to? Because I know obviously Uno is also
Yeah, of
open
course.
source, right?
Of course. So we're on GitHub, and so basically we're accepting all kinds of contributions. You can clone the repository. We're Apache 2 license, so free to use, and let us know what we do. We have some very cool people that have been doing some Linux-based embedded work where we have I don't remember, I think it's a Lego factory or something, or kind of like Lego factory, and they have an embedded screen somewhere that allows to control the machinery that's in the factory. So that's super cool. So any kind of things that people do with the Uno platform, we're interested, and those people are contributing as well to Uno, and we're super proud to have that community help us to get all that running.
Awesome. Well, this was super cool because it's really, really seems easy to get started on Linux, to build Linux apps, and of course, go to other platforms as well. Jérôme, thank you so much for coming on and showing this off. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Awesome. And don't forget, I'll put links to everything that Jérôme showed off, and also their YouTube and the Twitch stream and all this stuff, because you guys are all super active everywhere. Super fun to tune in. I silently creep in on all your awesome stuff that you're doing. So definitely check out all the rad stuff they're doing. Jérôme, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks to all of you for tuning in to this week's On .NET. And don't forget, if you're right here on the .NET YouTube, hit that like button if you like this at all, share it with a friend, and jam the subscribe button so you get notified every single time we put out a new video. That's going to do it for this week's On .NET. So until next time, thanks for watching.